This play wins 75% of the time in the NFL, and I'm going to show you how to find it in this video. Make sure you stay to the end, because I'm going to give you the key numbers that you need to make this strategy work that I'm going to teach you. I'm going to teach you guys exactly how to win the toughest bet in the NFL, which is the spread. This is something that literally everybody always tries to beat, and over the years it's become the toughest bet to make in the NFL, because you're not just picking which team is going to win, but you're also picking if they're going to cover the spread. So I'm going to share with you guys how you could actually find the right plays and how you could beat the system. So the first thing we want to start out with is going to be line movement. Okay, you want to see line movement from opening to current. Now, to give a couple examples, this is what you want to look at. Let's say, for example, we'll use the 49ers and the Rams. All right, let's say that the Rams opened up at -2 points, but now they're currently -7. That is something that you want to look at, all right, because we have a shift there of 5 points from opening to current. So when the number goes up from opening, that means you are looking at the favorite, okay? So in this case, we're going to say the Rams are the favorite. So what you would be looking at here is you would be looking at the Rams right now minus that 7 points. Now this is only the first step. Like I said, this is the first step that you're looking at is line movement. Now let's go and discuss if it was the opposite way here. All right, let's say, for example, that the opening line was 7 and then the current line is -2. All right, we're going to say it went opposite. If that was the case, then you'd be looking at the underdog, which in that case the underdog would be +2 currently. So once you knock down this first step, you should have knocked down a whole slate of games to just pretty much a handful of games that have the correct line movement, and you'd have those teams written down. Now let's go ahead and get to number 2. So number 1, we got our list down of the teams that had the line movement, all right? Number 2 is going to be trends, but not just any trends. So people make the mistake as they'll look at the trends for the last 5 games that the team has played. But what you want to do is you actually want to look at the head-to-head trends, how these teams fare against each other. And it has to be relevant, obviously, okay? If last time they played were 10 years ago, then that's not going to be able to be taken into account. At least if they play each other every season or twice in a year, at least you're able to get some data head-to-head wise between that. So you want to look at the trends for head-to-head, and I'd say about the last 5 to 6 matchups that they've had, as long as it's within a couple year span, because the team should still be pretty much the same within the last couple years. So let's go ahead and use example 1 to get to example 2, all right? Let's say, obviously, we're looking at the favorite here. Let's say the Rams -7. Let's say we look at the head-to-head trends, and it shows that the Rams in the last 5 games are 4-1 against the spread against the 49ers, okay? So here's a different thing, because when you look at head-to-head, there's 2 options here. They're going to give you the head-to-head money lines and the head-to-head against the spread. You want to pay attention to the against the spread because that's what we're playing, right? Let's say, for example, they're 4-1 against the spread. That sways in your favor as a second check from your first, which is line movement. So now you went through 2 checks here, and you're able to find a good head-to-head trend with the team that you have literally written down. Now, if you looked at the trends, and let's say in the last 8 they were 4-4 against the spread, then that's something that you wouldn't consider, right? You'd go ahead and you'd take that team off of your list, because you want the trends for head-to-head, especially for, like I said, against the spread, because that's what we're paying attention to be in your favor. And they should be in your favor by at least 70% and above. Now let's get to number 3. All right, we got the line movement, we're trends, we're all lining up there in the first 2 things. Next thing we're looking at here is going to be the money and the bet percentage. Okay, we have to pay attention to exactly where the money and the bet percentage is going to be on this game that we're playing. Now, if you guys want to fast forward through all this and you just want the answers given to you each and every day, make sure you guys click the link in the description where I show in the group exactly the plays that follow all these strategies that I teach you. But you need to find the money and bet percentage because it's very, very important, all right? This is one of the most important aspects of the process. So, again, what that means is, let's go ahead and take, for example, the Rams 49ers. All right, let's say that this is the bet percentage, this is the money percentage. So what we're going to say here is, what we're looking for is pretty much you'd want 70% of the bets to be on the Niners, all right? But 60%, let's say, of the money to be on the Rams. So if we have the Rams written down right now at Rams -7, because I went through our first two checks, this is what you're looking for. Because you're looking for the public and the small bets to be all over the 49ers. What that means is the public mostly, okay? Public and parlay bettors are here. That's what's accounting for 70% of the tickets that are coming in. All right, that's what bet percentage is. Bet percentage is the number of tickets that are coming in. So there's a heavy amount of tickets coming in. But the money, the big money, people that are putting thousands and thousands of dollars on the game, this is where we want to be at. Okay, we don't want to be where the small people are at. Okay, the small people, they're not always wrong, but majority of the time they are wrong. All right, you want to be where the money's going to be. So this is what it looks like. You want your money percentage to be higher than the bet percentage, favoring the team that you're looking at, which is right here. All right. The reason why you want it to be opposite, because like I said, we want the public to be heavy on one side while we're smart and we're sharp and we're on the other side. Now, once we have that checked out, we're going to get to number 4 here. All right. So number 4, this is going to be the part of the process where you have to understand if you're on a favorite or if you're on an underdog, certain things need to happen. All right. So if you're doing Rams -7, for example, we need to have a decent defense to cover the spread. This always happens in the NFL. If you don't have a great defense and you're giving points, there's always a chance for a backdoor cover because your defense isn't that strong. So what we need to do is we need to double check the defense of the team that we have that went through our checks. So let's say Rams -7, for example. Let's say that that's what we're looking at. Okay? If that's what we're looking at, we need to look at their defense. Their defense needs to be a top 5 defense in order to cover a spread that's pretty hefty. Okay? They need to be a top 5 defense. If they're not a top 5 defense, if they're, let's say, bottom 5 defense, you're susceptible to them not being able to cover a spread because the defense is really what dictates if they're going to cover a spread or not. It's not usually the offense. It's the defense. If they're able to hold the team from grabbing a backdoor touchdown or any goofy stuff, then guess what? That's giving you the most opportunity to be able to actually win on the spread. And that's why it's so tough in the NFL to bet on the spread, because this happens all the time where people come through backdoor cover because the defense wasn't able to stand strong. So key things that you need to remember is if you're betting on a favorite, they need to have a top 5 defense. Now, you could stretch it to like top 7. All right, you could stretch it maybe a couple more there. I always like to play it safe. Like if you don't find a play that's within top 5 defense, you could stretch it a little bit, maybe to make something work. But I wouldn't go further than like 7 or 8. All right, I wouldn't venture further than that. Now, underdog. If you're taking the underdog in the matchup, you need to make sure that the team that they're facing has at least a bottom 10 defense. For the reasons that I just explained for if we were betting on the favorite. Because now, if you're on the underdog and the team that you're facing, their defense isn't that great and they're susceptible to backdoor covers, guess what? Now that plays into your advantage as the underdog because now you're getting points and then you might be able to slide through and to be able to cover that spread through the back door literally in the 3rd or 4th quarter because that opposing defense isn't on their game. Now let's get to number 5. This is the most important part of the process alongside with the money bet percentage. All right, because let's say we go through and that play met all of our checks. This is a play that we're going to make. Now, since this is the play that we're going to make, we need to adjust the spread according to key numbers. Key numbers are the most common numbers that happen in the NFL on the spread where people get screwed and they lose by a half a point here, 1 point here. So we have to be able to adjust. So example being, let's say it's Rams -7. All right, we can't bet this just like that. You cannot bet just -7. All right. Now I'm going to throw a screenshot up of all the key numbers. So make sure you guys grab a screenshot of it if you need it. All right. I'm going to put it up here so that way you guys can see it and then take a screenshot of it so that way you can save it for your archives because it's very, very important. But let's go ahead and now get to the example that we're using here. Rams -7, let's say. That's what we want to play. All right. Well, that's not the number that we're going to be taking. All right. If this was a play, we would be taking an alternate spread of Rams -5.5. Why is that? Because now you're looking and you're thinking maybe, wouldn't you just buy back to 6.5? Because 7 obviously is a touchdown key number. No. And you want to know why you buy back to 5.5 now? Because the extra point. Extra points used to be 99% efficiency. All right? They used to be automatic. But ever since they switched it and they brought it back a little bit, so that way, though that extra point isn't a for sure thing, that's dropped to 93%. All right? Hence the reason why we would take that out of the equation and bypass 6.5, because now if they missed the extra point, now they're only up by 6, we take that and bring it back to 5.5. That's the reason why we do that nowadays. All right, just because of that extra point figure right there. Now, this explains the favorite side, but let's look at the underdog side. All right, let's say, for example, the Rams were +7. All right, let's say that's what we were looking at. We were looking at +7. Well, we wouldn't play +7 either. Reason why is because if we just went up a half a point here and we go to Rams +7.5, guess what? We got a whole extra possession now that the opposing team needs to score or able to make us lose. So if that other team is up by 7 points, they need either a field goal or another touchdown or a safety, something stupid like that, to be able to make us lose on the underdog side if we're getting 7.5 points. So that's why key numbers are so important when it comes to spreads, because you have to be able to buy off and on. There's so many times where people lose by literally this right here, 0.5, the hook. All right, and that's because most of the time, this is how you could tell when somebody's a professional bettor and somebody's an amateur. All right, if they post tickets and they're posting a play that they have a team that's -3.5, that's an amateur. All right, you would never play -3.5. If somebody's -7.5 and they're betting, and you see that, that's not how you do it. Okay, you are susceptible to lose by the hook by betting just literally those numbers right there. And like I said, make sure you guys take a screenshot of the key numbers, so that way you have it for your archive, because it's very important. If you don't take a screenshot of it and you don't have these numbers to reference, then you're not going to know what to do on any given Sunday when you're trying to bet the spreads and trying to beat the spread at the sportsbook.